program, which many of you have seen, where I played Pastor Tassie's comments from a video that he himself had uploaded 4 or 5 years ago, addressing me and titling it "The Freedom to Blame the Potter." And I made it very clear in my having recorded that my desire here was to lay aside all these canards, because they were canards, so that we could actually have a debate that was focused upon the text of Romans chapter 9, that wouldn't have to go into all this other stuff. Unfortunately, what Pastor Tassie chose to do was to take that program, accuse me of having started the debate a day early. I'm not sure why he didn't realize that would mean that he started the debate 4 years early, but anyway. And go after all of what was said in that video, rather than debating Romans chapter 9. He just abandoned the debate. There was no debate. I'm not going to list it as one of my debates. I apologized over and over again to the audience. It was beyond my control. I was the first one to speak, and as everyone will be able to see when the video is posted, if it is posted, I will have to admit this would be the kind of thing that could all of a sudden experience a catastrophic hard drive failure. But I hope not. Once it's posted, you'll be able to see that I gave a 20-minute opening presentation on Romans chapter 9. And it was pretty much almost identical to what I said a year ago in Dallas on Romans chapter 9. Because when you have 20 minutes, both times, to exegete the same text of Scripture, I hope you don't say much different. Because the meaning of the text hasn't changed in 1 year. Pastor Tassie got up, and within, I would say, 60 seconds, was disqualified from the debate. It was done. It was over. Any meaningful debate judge, anything like that, pull the plug, that would have been it. Well, we didn't have any judges. And so we had to endure a 20-minute harangue about how terrible I am and people don't want to debate me because I'm so mean. And I don't remember how many times the term James White was used in those first 20 minutes, but a dozen at least. And obviously then, once we got to the cross-examination, it was extremely challenging because I was trying to... It was a difficult situation. The place was packed out. There was standing room only. We had to turn at least 100 people away. The air conditioning wasn't keeping up. It was swelteringly hot. People had traveled from a long distance to be there. And so I felt a very strong necessity upon me to try to make something positive come out of this. I attempted in the cross-examination to do this, and there's some cell phone video clips floating around that still don't give you the full extent of this. Pastor Tassie would not respond to my questions. Not that he just stood there quietly, it's just his responses were irrational, irrelevant, disconnected. No matter how hard I tried, I could not get the man to interact with me in a meaningful fashion. And so in the first cross-examination, I don't remember how early I just gave up. But then there was a break, and in the second cross-examination, he had said something about John chapter 6, so I thought, maybe there's a possibility that I could go to the words of Jesus, maybe this could bring some calm, and we could reason. Because no reasoning had taken place at this point. And if you listen to the second cross-examination, I tried every possible way to get Pastor Tassie to explain what John 6:44 meant. He kept going back to Calvinism and predeterminism, and I said, let's pretend I'm not even on planet Earth. If someone came up to you after a Sunday morning service with their Bible open and said, Pastor, what does this text say? Are you telling me you would go into a discussion of Calvinism, James White, and predeterminism? How would you answer the question? He could not tell us what John 6:44 meant without going into an attack upon Calvinism. Couldn't do it. So I gave up then. He asked me what it was saying, so I gave a nice quick sermon on John 6. It was, what else could you do? And in my closing statement, I opened up Romans chapter 8. I realized God has a purpose in everything. And it was great to meet a lot of folks. It was really neat. A young lady came up to me and had me sign the Roman Catholic Controversy and gave me her testimony of salvation while reading the book. She had been delivered from Roman Catholicism, and that's always exciting. And a lot of people saying, the ministry has had tremendous meaning to me and impact. A lot of people said it kept me sane during seminary. I love to hear that. So it was great to meet folks, and I stood outside for a long time afterwards, greeting people and talking to people, and we destroyed many selfies. Lots of pixels wasted with pictures and stuff like that. So I understand God had His purposes, but what was truly troubling, I've contemplated this encounter, and I have a feeling that what was really going on is that Pastor Tassie's church is dependent upon the Calvary Chapel movement, and from his perspective, I am just the worst, nastiest person in the world to the Calvary Chapel movement. Why? Well, because so many people have left Calvary Chapel over the issue of quote-unquote Calvinism. Well, why? I've said this, and I will say it again. Until the Calvary Chapel movement stops trying to bury the discussion and starts dealing with it in a meaningful fashion and not giving the kinds of answers that Chuck Smith and Brian Broderson and George Bryson have been giving on the subject, Calvary Chapel will continue to produce a large number of Calvinists. Why? Because Calvary Chapel teaches people to believe the Bible. Calvary Chapel actually teaches people to do a meaningful job of exegesis and interpretation. And so they contain within themselves the seeds of their own destruction. They're going to have to become liberal in their view of the Bible to maintain their perspectives. It's actually a compliment to say that Calvary Chapel teaches people to exegete